Good evening. This is to formally advise that as required by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 to 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, the Yarmouth Select Board will hold a public meeting on Tuesday, October 1st, 2024, at 5:45 p.m., beginning with executive session, and then opening to the public no sooner than 6 p.m. in the hearing room, Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. 02664. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided on the town website. I would accept a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, which, if held in open meeting, may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining of the public body, and the chair so declares with the board to reconvene in open session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, if we could have a roll call on that. Tracy Post?
Aye.
Joyce Foot? And the chair also says aye. We are now in executive session.
I'll put up our little sign.
Okay. Evening.
Sorry, that was, I'm hearing at 6 PM. They
We've
want
just
to
gone into
withdraw.
executive session.
Okay, good.
So, Bob, I'll turn this over to you at this point.
Yeah, He'd said to just, oh, right, we need a little sign.
And that is just,
The Zoom looks like it's not muted though.
Is he there? We're just making sure that we're muted. You are muted. Including Zoom.
And usually there's a little executive session sign.
It said board in executive session.
Okay, yeah. We're good then. It's, okay.
Okay, here we go. Okay, Bob.
okay, thank you.
says aye as well. Okay.
Thank you.
We are now back in regular session. We need to give him a knock to let him know. Thank you. That was enlightening.
Folks, we're all going back into public session, so come on over. Stay until we go to the next. Hi, how's it going?
Hi, guys.
Amber, second grade, first, second grade.
Hi, Tomas. Hello, Jim.
How are you?
I don't know if I want to sit there. Alexa, sit there. No.
We thank you all for we thank you all for your patience. We are now back in session, and I'd like to call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and do we have any announcements today? And public comments. Do we have anyone that would like to make some public comments?
Good evening. I'm Jim Saban. For those who don't know, I'm the chairman of the Drive-In Site Committee. I'm the vice chairman of the Planning Board and the Planning Board's representative to the Design Review Committee. What I'm about to say has nothing to do with any of them. This is my opinions and not those of any of those boards or committees. Unfortunately, I was away when you got to the process of naming the park. And I just want to take a minute to comment on that because it's much more than a boardwalk. That property has been designed by this community. It's not just a boardwalk, it's a kayak ramp, it's a walking area, it's a playground, it's artist sites, it's an event space. It's not just a boardwalk. I appreciate that you've spent all your time deliberating, as did the Drive-In Site Committee. I spent a lot of time thinking about how to name this property. And my own personal opinion is that the word boardwalk does a disservice to what this park is. And it's not too late for you to reconsider your naming and look at some of the names that the committee recommended to you. But I truly believe, in my opinion, that calling it the Boardwalk Park is a disservice to what it is and to the time and efforts that the committee and town staff went into creating this property that's not just a boardwalk. So that's my comments with regards to the Drive-In site, and I'd appreciate it if you think about it, and you know, like I said, it's not too late to change it, and to look at the recommendations that we have. The second is something with regards to planning. The board has put together a committee to review the use of the Matakees property. And I'm really having a hard time figuring out how the biggest piece of property we'll redevelop in our town requires planning. But for some reason, the Finance Committee is on this committee, and the Planning Board is not on the Planning Committee. So I'm sure other members of the Planning Board probably have similar thoughts, but maybe you could take a minute and explain to us why you don't have a member of the Planning Board on a committee that is going to plan the biggest piece of property we've had in town redeveloped probably ever, and the logic between having them off and other committees on. So I think we just are trying to figure that out. I know I've been trying to figure it out, so maybe you could take a moment and explain to us why the Planning Board is not part of the planning of a huge town property. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have any other public comments today? Okay, the next item on our agenda is a hearing for a special alcohol license, and I will be turning the chair over to our licensing chair, Tracy Post.
Bob, you have information on this?
And I did speak with the applicant just as we were going into executive session, and she requested a withdrawal of this application without prejudice. And then they're going to maybe replan a different event and come back with a new application. So, and that was Ms. Demoulinaire.
Okay. Do we ever ask for those withdrawals in writing, or is verbals acceptable?
Verbal's acceptable.
Well, I'd make a motion that
We accept.
we accept the withdrawal without
So moved.
prejudice.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Back to you.
Thank you, Tracy. Our next item on the agenda is a discussion for the ME Small feasibility with the Dennis Yarmouth Regional School Superintendent and School Committee.
Good evening.
Good evening, and if you'd like to just introduce yourselves, please.
Mark Smith, Superintendent from Dennis Yarmouth.
Tomas Tolentino, the Chair of the Dennis Yarmouth Regional School Committee, Representative Yarmouth, and we have Mr. Joe Glenn, our liaison. Also, I believe he's online.
Okay. And we were asking you to come today because we really are trying to get a handle on where do we go from here? And what are your suggestions on where we're going from here? So if you could respond to that.
So we're talking specifically about the ME Small project, maybe a clear.
I think,
Yeah.
to clarify, you recently had a meeting with the, perhaps Bob could,
Yeah, just to summarize in a nutshell, and we briefly discussed this in my town administrator's report at the last meeting, and we promised to set it up for an agenda item so that we can discuss it further. And this goes back to the meeting that we had last month with the superintendent of schools, who gave us a nice presentation along with David Flynn on some of the statistics, condition issues surrounding the ME Small School, and we began the process of having a discussion of some proposed options. And he had announced at that time that a week following that meeting, we had a meeting with the school building authority, that school building assistance program. And we have made very strong applications, worked with our legislative delegation, and this has been going on for the last few years to try to get the ME Small School into the SBA program so that we can begin a feasibility study, generate some options, and also be able to gain the subsidy from the SBA on a potential school construction project. And it was very interesting that some of the information that we had discussed prior to the SBA meeting conflicted with a little of the information that we received at the SBA meeting from the SBA folks. And they had specifically requested us to give them some additional feedback during the month of October that would assist them in making their final decision whether they were going to allow Yarmouth to enter that program for the ME Small School. And one of the key issues that I wasn't comfortable, just based on some of the conflicts between our discussion and the new information that we learned, just providing input. So what we felt is we needed some additional discussions with the board, with the school department, hopefully with the idea of just having full transparency and understanding, and any feedback that we give to the SBA, which may determine whether they accept us this year or not, that we're all comfortable with and we know the implications of it. And the real specific issue came at our last meeting. We discussed that it was important to study the possible integration of the students from the ME Small School into the Station Avenue School, that may be a more economical approach to dealing with the problems at the school, and that it could be done by an addition. And when we met with the SBA, they were really pushing for that. But their program and the way they would work it is they wouldn't allow us to, under their program, go in and just do a little addition on the back of the SBA. What they want to see on the back of the Station Ave, what they want to see is us combine the schools into a consolidated school and do a major renovation of the entire school, which may not achieve our goals of economy. That what it would be doing is creating another new 800 student school potentially at that site, and it may have higher costs, and they kind of put us on the spot, and they were saying things like, are you ready for this program? Is the town and the school together? Are you going to do this? And we just thought, look, what our idea is that we would study the potential integration of those students at Station Ave. That's what we want to look at and have some various cost options to do that. And we'd also like to study the feasibility of a standalone school and not buy into this notion that we're either going to build a new 800-student school at Station Ave or another location to combine these and have a massive project. And I just think that we need to kind of be clear with the SBA that they're looking for us to take on a much bigger project. I'm not sure if that's going to make them 100% happy with us, but we wanted to make sure that when we go back and talk to SBA, we wanted to do it together, hand in hand, stay with the school district and the town, with everyone knows what it is that we're telling the SBA that we're going to be doing, and not promising them that we're going to have a massive consolidation when it may not be in our best interest. So what we felt was that we needed, and I think I discussed with Superintendent Smith as well as with the Board of Selectmen separately, that we needed to just have one more meeting to go over some of those issues and hone down what our comments and promises to the SBA will be, and then we're going to go back and talk to them and hopefully be accepted into that program, but kind of on our own terms and not have the project mushroom before we even start. And I think that was worth the discussion. And so that kind of sums up where we stand.
Yeah, so I mean, I would agree with a lot of what Bob had to say, that definitely the MSBA is not, I would say they encourage school districts to look at larger projects. I'd come from another regional school district that was formed because one town wanted to build a new high school. It would have been a smaller high school, and MSBA said, we'll consider that once you look at regionalization first. And so the town, one of the two towns, went through the process of exploring a regionalized relationship with another town. They ultimately ended up in a region, and then they ultimately ended up with a new high school that is a bigger regional high school. Because MSBA is reluctant to fund smaller projects, especially at the high school level. Elementary school is a little bit different, but definitely they're looking for scale, right? They want to serve as many kids as possible. If you think about it from the state level, it makes sense from a state funding standpoint. So I got the same sentiment. They definitely want us to at least study the concept of consolidation. I had expressed the same concerns that I expressed last time I was here about consolidation on the particular site that is where Station Avenue currently sits, and their response back was that's a site-specific problem. That isn't necessarily a consolidation problem, which was something that I think caught both of us off guard, in the sense that so they were, because meaning like you can consolidate the schools, you don't have to do it at that site. So you could explore consolidation and look at other sites as part of the study. Now, they also were clear to say, study just means you study all the options and then you determine what is the best option for the community going forward. But they wanted to know, from basically my understanding from the exit of that meeting was they need to know from us, are we going to study consolidation as part of our feasibility study and the different ways we could consolidate or not? Or are we just focused on ME Small and we're not going to look at the other elementary school at all? That was sort of my takeaway from the meeting, and we owe them a response because they will consider that as part of our final, their final consideration of the application for this year, with whether or not we will study in the feasibility study consolidation options. And the option may be that I guess I'm not the study expert, but, I think basically you're looking at studying a standalone project that is ME Small, either full renovation or full rebuild, brand new school. Option B is some type of addition, expansion, renovation that includes bringing ME Small over to the current Station Avenue Elementary School. Or option C, which is some third new school which consolidates those two schools into one new elementary school, I don't know, Yarmouth Elementary School X, that doesn't currently exist, and takes Station Avenue and ME Small offline, but it consolidates the both of them into now one Yarmouth Elementary School, was sort of my gist of the conversation, or my understanding of the conversation, right? But that those would be studied as part of the feasibility study, and then you don't make any decisions as part of the feasibility study, but you have to put all those out in front of the community, and the community then ultimately makes the decision what's in the best interest of the community.
And how do you feel about that?
I believe that if you're going to go down a project as big as this, any school building project, you should study all the options. I have my perspective on Station Ave about moving ME Small over to Station Ave, but I'm just one person with one perspective. I'm not a study expert. I think we should study that option. And if I'm shown that it can work in a way that allays the concerns that I have and the community at large, Yarmouth believes that that's the best option that's put in front. To Bob's earlier comments, it's not just, it's a 30, that building's not an old building, but it's coming up on a 30-year-old building. So, and I've seen the HVAC system that exists inside the brand new school. And I've seen the boilers that exist in Station Avenue. If you're going to add 350 space for 350 kids, you're going to need a modern HVAC system to heat that. And so either you're going to have two operating HVAC systems, or you're going to need to upgrade the HVAC system in the current Station Ave in order to make it all work together. So now the project just starts to get big. And then I don't know what happens once you start to open up Station Avenue. Do you have to bring everything in Station Ave, the old part of Station Ave, up to modern code? I don't know enough about building to know all those things. But that's what a study would bring, right? A study would bring all that stuff in front of the community and say, the addition renovation project at Station Avenue, this is what you're looking at. Brand new school that just serves the needs, or a fully renovated ME Smalls that serves the needs of just that student population, this is what it looks like. And some third option that would be consolidated, this is what it looks like. And then that's in front of the community, and the community ultimately makes the decision. It's not my decision to make. It's ultimately the taxpayer's decision to make.
So let's say that the taxpayer comes up with a decision that is contrary to what SBA wants. Will SBA still contribute financially going forward?
My understanding is once we're in the pipeline, SBA is looking for us to, they will allot us up to, they budget, again, you correct me if you heard this differently, and my understanding of the way SBA works is we need to signal to them that we want to at least study consolidation, because that is ultimately what they'll budget. So they'll budget for the potential of their portion of a roughly 800 kid elementary school. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean we have to build an 800 kid, but when they're forecasting now 6 years down the road when that project would be completed, they're going to And if they award Dennis Yarmouth and the town of Yarmouth to be invited in, they have to set a figure based upon square footage estimates, the price to build per square footage. And then they have to multiply that out by are they looking at a 300 or 350 to 400 kid elementary school or an 800 kid elementary school? They have to set a budget for X number of years from now. And if they set one for us, quite frankly, and they said this at the meeting too, if they invite us in at 800, that probably means somebody further down the list is not getting in this year. Because they need to hold the funds in case they have to do their contribution to our project 5 years from now. So it really helps them in their budgeting process to know, are we gonna explore this as a potential option or are we not? And I got the sense, and this is just my gut, that they want us to at least explore it as an option. I don't know if it strengthens the application or not, but that was my sense in the meeting, right?
Yeah, I think that it would probably strengthen our application, on the positive side, if we agree to study the consolidation, but on the negative side, they're pretty bold. They say right out, we want you to consolidate. So we're going to have to, if we decide, look at the numbers and decide together that it's best to just do a standalone school, we're going to have to withstand a lot of pressure from that state agency because they have an agenda. That's what they want, and they're clear about it. They said it right out.
Tracy?
Okay, thank you. So we've been down this road, right? They're not shy. You're absolutely correct. They pushed us into that exact direction, and it was not at the community's wish, because ultimately our community voted against it. We still got stuck with it. And I don't mean stuck with it in a bad way. I'm not trying to be negative, but that was the reality. We lost complete control when they came in. So I'm very hesitant and I'm nervous to undertake such a big project. I don't think it's as simple as, as you know, I've been sitting through the school committee meetings. I haven't seen any discussion from the school committee at a detailed level in terms of where they want to go. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this entire process. I think for me, you know how I feel about our taxpayers having to undertake the expense of a whole nother school at this point. I think it's a lot. And unfortunately, I feel like the time for the conversation probably has passed a little bit, but it's a bigger issue on many levels, because, not to rehash our entire conversation from before, but I don't think that we think out of the box a lot of the times, and I know traffic is a complete issue on Station Ave, which is where your position's from, but have we looked at alternate access to that property? Has there been any look to get there from a different direction, from perhaps regional, or, I remember the whole thing around the school when it was planned, but we don't even use that, and there's a traffic issue in the front, but maybe we can take people off that site in a different direction. I talked the last time you were here about the solar panels. What's the life expectancy of that entire area? Is that area available? But I think the school committee needs to really dive into this in detail, because it's not that simple, and I'm afraid to go into something and have it, as you said, mushroom into something that we lose control over, only because that's what's happened before. My other thought on this, and I'm going to say it, is we have gotten away from our renegotiation of the regional agreement. We did some to satisfy our last situation, but perhaps, I'd be interested in talking to Dennis, because if Dennis was willing to actually pay 50% of the capital, perhaps we look at a joint school. They've not been willing to renegotiate at a higher percentage. We're stuck on a formula that's based on student population for both the operating costs and the capital. For a long period of time, we were trying to get them to look at it differently and take capital as one percentage and the operation as a student population. But, if Dennis was willing to open that negotiation up again and pay for 50%, maybe we could look at a different type of combined school. I think that would be a lot more palatable to the taxpayers here in Yarmouth. But to pay 70% of a school, again, and 100% at this point, if it's just Yarmouth, is going to be a tough pill to swallow. So I think that we need to really maybe do some, and I know we're on a timeline because it's October and they need an answer by October. My answer isn't no. I hate to not look at these options, but again, I'm very hesitant because what ends up happening is we say, yes, well, we're going to look at some type of regionalization, and as it's already known, we see what happened the last time. It's a $100 million building. It's beautiful, it's great, but it's expensive, and we can't afford 2 of those. So, to the extent that we can look at that property and really do an analysis of access, or we talk to our partners about some type of negotiation on the regional agreement and splitting capital, at that point in time, I would think that would be amenable to doing some type of joint building between the two towns again. But that's my comments. It's a very complex issue. And again, I'd love to hear the school committee's position on it, because I haven't really heard.
Yeah, it's on our next agenda. We've heard the minutes from the meetings and discussions that have had, but we haven't had an open discussion on, specific thoughts of what was happening. We really wanted to know your thoughts, because at the end of the day, that's going to help us make decisions. But we haven't had a formal discussion at any of our meetings about what the plans are. All this has happened, so fast between the meetings with the MSBA and then when our meetings and your meetings happen. So it is on our next agenda, but that doesn't help us today because we haven't had an open discussion about it.
And when is that next meeting, Tomas?
It's Monday,
Monday.
so.
Okay.
But I mean, the committee has been apprised of this is the 6th year of this application. I mean, I sat in front of this board last year during the budget process and got full support for our SOI application, said we'd have full support for going through this process. So, this is not a new application. This is not a new process. This is not a new need in the town. I did respond through the district staff to your last question about the solar panels. So, but maybe that information didn't get to you. So the solar panels are 10 years old. They have a life expectancy of 20 to 25 years old. So they've got plenty of life left on them. As far as a roadway goes, the only way to come in off Regional Ave would be go through the athletic fields. So you'd lose the field that the Cape Cod Baseball League plays on, you lose the soccer fields, some portions of all of those to get a road back. And the price of asphalt is not cheap right now. It would not be an inexpensive project. And then we'd have another problem, which would be where would we displace all those athletic fields that are in the back there. And then there's a direct route, but we'd have to go over the new fields to drive into that there's a neighborhood right behind, but I'm not sure that neighborhood would want us sending traffic into that neighborhood out the back there. So I'm sure we would have some complaints if because we did discuss, I've communicated out to the public that we are going to have to repair the damages or that we had a faulty design in the field project, so we're going to have to do some reconstruction there with those new fields. And somebody asked if we'd be able to put a right-of-way in through that neighborhood, and we're not coming in driving construction vehicles in and out through that access way. So I don't think making a permanent way to send buses or something else in and out through that neighborhood would be a good idea. And then as far as amending the regional agreement, that's something that we can definitely look into. The flip side of that coin is a 50-50 split. Ezra Baker is 94 years old.
I know. That's
So
my point.
the-
We both need to build schools at this point.
Right, and if we want to enter sort of the land of third rail conversations, the idea of either one of the two communities giving up an elementary school in their towns, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I've worked in and have superintendent colleagues in all sorts of regions, and the hardest thing to get any community to accept is the idea of not having an elementary school in their community. So somebody would have to say, okay, we're not gonna have an elementary school in Yarmouth, and we'll build a combined school on the Wixon campus. I'm not sure how the Yarmouth residents would feel about not having an elementary school in the town of Yarmouth, or vice versa. If we were to say, we're gonna close Ezra Baker and build a combined school in Yarmouth, and now all the schools are in Yarmouth, I'm not sure how the Dennis residents would feel about that idea. And I can understand the feelings that would be associated with that. I think that would be a pretty hard sell, and that would take, I would think, a long time to build that case. I don't know, those are just some of the immediate things that I see in front of that.
Well, the regional agreement needs to be, there were things that never got done that were on the list. One of them being, the only people who could make changes to the regional agreement aren't the two partners, but it has to be brought forward by the school committee. So the only person who bring forward an amendment to the agreement is the school committee. So it has to start with them on all the issues that never got addressed the last time, so. The capital part aside, there were other items that need to be addressed, so, thank you.
Mark,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Joyce?
Oh, thanks. I just have two. One is, how is the ME Small School for students right now? I assume there've been enough repairs that it's safe and that they're dry inside, because I do remember the leaks. But then the second question is, concentrating on ME Small, do we have any sense of how strongly parents in West Yarmouth would feel about their elementary age students going over to Station Ave as opposed to having an elementary school nearer to home?
Second question, I couldn't give you a straight answer. I don't have like that data. I haven't asked that specific question. I don't know if, as a resident, if you do. So I can't answer that specific one. We could try to get a sense of it, but I don't have, I'm just fully honest, I don't have an answer to that one. To the first question, I would say we do the best we can, but when we just had that big rainstorm just the other day, I would be lying to you if I said there was not water in the building. I was over there walking the halls with the principal, and there's water in classrooms, there's water in the hallways. The roof has failed, and we're doing the best we can. But to replace that roof, it's a multi-million-dollar investment. And so we throw money at it the best we can. We have patched it. We tried a temporary rubberized solution that held a little bit, but when we got 4 inches of rain in 2 days, it didn't hold. And there's lots of other issues in that building that just don't make it conducive to a learning environment for the future. But we definitely do the best we can to keep up with it, and we'll continue to invest. Actually, we have a finance subcommittee meeting coming up here soon to talk about some ways that we might be able to invest some more. Because even if we do get invited in, we're 5-6 years down the road from whatever the solution is, right? So we need to continue to look for ways to your point, keep it a healthy and safe environment. But is it ideal? No. And and I don't mean ideal like as in ideal Shangri-La idyllic. I mean not having to have a big bucket in the hallway where the water's coming in when it's raining. That's, yeah, those conditions still exist, especially when we get a heavy rain.
Well, they'll love it by the time they get to the intermediate school, but
Light at
they
the end
may
of the
be
tunnel.
somewhat demoralized by then.
Yeah, I think parents at Emmy Small appreciate where the location of it. I think they love the community they have. When we talk to the principal, and we continue to let them know that we have not forgotten them, and we say the same thing to the students, right? There's a brand new school that they'll get to, but they're not in it now. So, but I think they want what everyone wants. They want to make sure they're in a safe learning environment, and is it as safe as it can be right now? We're working on making sure it is. But could it be better? Yeah, obviously, it definitely could be. So I think they have a great community, and whatever option is decided, will be the best for them. And I'm sure, not everyone's going to be happy, but, as long as we can create an environment for the students to learn and not have to worry about something like noise of rain or moving your location of your desk, as long as they don't have to worry about that, they can do what they do at that age and just learn and have fun, right?
I do realize there's an applied science, lesson in there somewhere, but probably that would be better taught in middle school. Thank you.
Okay, and as part of the feasibility study, is there an enrollment piece as well? Because we heard from you that over the past 3 years, you've seen an increase, but it begs the question, does that mean that next year it's going to suddenly tip and go the other way?
Yeah, and that was actually part of our application too, because not only are we tight for space, and they're using every space in ME Small, but the same problem exists at Station Avenue. So actually, part of the application that we wrote this year was to discuss that, the fact that, so for it's doubly compounding in that ME Small houses all of our substantially separate special education programs because we have no room at Station Avenue to hold them. ME Small holds our Yarmouth-based preschool because we have no room at Station Avenue to have a preschool. So not only does ME Small, our current building that is in most dire need, it also holds some of our most vulnerable kids. And so it really was a focus of the application this year, and the MSBA spoke to that when they came. I know one of the woman who was in charge of the operation pulled me aside and said that she noted that as part of our application, and maybe that's probably why they want us to look at the whole picture. But it's also, while the focus is at ME Small, we need to look at enrollment across Yarmouth, and because we need to relieve some pressure at Station Avenue as well, and however we do that, because we're overcrowded in both locations. And a long-term enrollment study will take a look at that, but I don't think this challenge is, I don't see it changing.
No, and seeing as you drive down and seeing new construction and new places being built on 6A, that's only going to increase the amount of families we have, right? And so if we increase the amount of families, that means there's more students. So, as things continue to grow in town in different areas, that's going to continue to put compression on the maximum space we have currently. And as, part of the things we have to look forward a couple of years on, what's happening in town, because that's going to affect how many students we're going to have eventually in the next coming years.
And the only other part that I would add is that we're launching a new strategic plan this year, and one of the things that I identified coming in is for the last, I only looked back 10 or 11 years, but so the last 10 or 11 years, DY has, everybody knows school choice is a thing on the Cape, and DY, and we discussed school choice a little bit while we were here, we talked about school choice in, but DY loses school choice at a rate out to in is 4-1. So, and that's not something that I want to continue. So, and we will be working to correct that. So that means that we will have fewer and fewer people who reside in town going to other public schools. So the enrollment push is going to just continue to move in the direction of either more stability or continue to increase. I think there's multiple factors that are going to continue to keep more kids in the DY district, and that's ultimately going to either stabilize enrollment or continue to push it up. But there's definitely other factors at play that are increasing student enrollment.
And who pays for the feasibility study? Is it something that the SBA pays for?
No, that would be something that as a community, that would be a community pay for, just like the last time. We would be a,
Last time it was 475,000.
475,000 the last time.
and that's where I think Mr. Rittenauer mentioned, right? It's the SBA looks at two things. They look at need, and they look at readiness. So is there a need for the building project? And that's what was part of that senior study. They came out, they spent about an hour asking us very specific questions about our application, and then we toured the space, so they got to see some of the things that we had sent them pictures of or had mentioned in our application, but we actually walked them through classrooms, brought them down to the boiler room, brought them to the crazy electrical, can't describe it as anything other than looks like something out of Frankenstein, where the electricity comes into that building. And it's this big thing, like out of whatever that was built in the late 50s, early 60s. It's like this interesting looking thing that looks like something from like Frankenstein's monster. And then showed them where the water is coming in, like all those. I really had wished it had been a rainy day, but it wasn't a rainy, it was a beautiful sunny day. But you can still see where the water tends to come in. And then the other piece is, and they asked, those are the types of questions that Mr. Rittenauer referenced, which is like, is the community going to be ready to move on this project? If they say you can come in, is the community ready to say, okay, we want to enter in? And we need to be able to say yes or no on those two things. Well, the need we can answer. We can't alone answer whether or not the community is going to come in.
So hypothetically, we get approved for this. Does that mean that in the budget for the coming school year, we have to add $475,000 for the feasibility study?
We need to have a conversation about that, yeah.
We took that as a separate article to town meeting the last time and had the public vote on that separately.
The only
It didn't
redeeming
come out of-
feature.
It didn't come out of the school budget. It was a separate line paid by the town of Yarmouth.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
We, meaning really the school district, needs to send communication. It would be great if it came joint communication from myself and Mr. Rittenauer about whether or not the next thing that they're waiting for from us is whether or not we want to enter, if we want the feasibility study to look at consolidation, to include consolidation or not to include consolidation, which would get at the idea of Emmy Small and Station Avenue in some way being combined.
The only thing I can say to that is if we take the same approach of bringing it to a town meeting, I'd be more comfortable with that and having the people have their say. Because I think that I don't know if there's harm in saying, let's move forward, and if we get entered into it, then if we can't get the feasibility study, we have to decline. But for me, that would be an indication of, the public sentiment on the project. That's who we ultimately represent. And I think, I wouldn't want to miss out on it. But I think that if we bring it to town meeting and let the people tell us how they feel about it, and it may be a no, and then we have to take our direction from there. But that might be the best way to move forward. I'm not sure.
I know that I would feel a lot more comfortable knowing how the people feel about this. I mean, this is another potentially costly item. But at the same point, there is a tremendous need at Emmy Small. I don't think anyone is disputing that fact. So is there a downside to our saying we could go ahead one small step in that we would be asking at town meeting for the approval of the the voters of whether or not to spend the money for the feasibility study.
So, no, I think what we would be, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the taxpayers are ultimately going to have to, so there's the step, obviously, of the feasibility study. Then there's a design phase, then there's selecting of options, then there's going to be a design, and then there's ultimately going to be a bond amount, right? I mean, I'm skipping a couple steps, but those are the big steps in which we'll need the community to be involved in making like the big decisions, right? So yes or no to fund a feasibility study. And then once that feasibility study is done, here's what the feasibility study, which I'm a big, full transparency, put everything out on the table, put all the options out on the table, have a community-based discussion on it. I don't think there's any harm in that, personally. And say, here's all the options, here's, this one is got its pros and cons, this one's got these pros and cons, this one's got these pros and cons. And then let's have a conversation about which one, and then maybe, collectively, we all have a recommendation, but ultimately, it's gonna be the taxpayers that are gonna say they think, they agree with our recommendation, they don't agree with our recommendation, whatever it is. But we can put everything out on the table. Then the next option is we're gonna go with this, and then it's gotta go out to get preliminary design and preliminary bid done on it, so we can get a sense of what the bond project needs to be, and then people are gonna have to make a decision. And we're gonna get from MSBA what their percentage of that is gonna be, so then you'll know that, the $100 project, MSBA is gonna cover $57 of it, so the town's gonna be responsible for $43. I'm obviously using fake numbers. And then that's gonna then have to go back to the taxpayers to say, do you wanna fund that? And at any point in that process, it could be stopped.
And the ballot question as well. And just to recap procedurally, I mean, the way I see this thing stacked up is, we've worked hard on the application. We've got the legislative delegation, everyone. We've got the attention of the SBA. Now, they need to determine, and they're going to do that in fairly short order, are we going to be invited to participate in their program? And what that does, that's the key to us going to town meeting. If they indicate they're willing to take us on, we're still not in. We go to town meeting and we present, this is what our obligations are, this is what we'll be studying on a feasibility study. Do you want to move forward now with this, or do you want to wait a year, consider it? And we don't have to go in there. But the one thing that I'd like to do is at least in terms of getting that initial decision whether the SBA is going to invite us in or not, I'd like to see that done jointly between the boards and just indicate, to them, we'll be willing to look at the feasibility of consolidating, but, I don't really see a compelling argument why we would need to consolidate. And I think that the critical thing that Dr. Smith pointed out, it strikes me is that from once we get the nod that they're going to be willing to take us on, which is the key to getting the 57%, right? Every step along the way is the town of Yarmouth decision only. It doesn't involve any votes from Dennis or anything. It has to go to town meeting for the feasibility study. Then the feasibility study, if that's approved, it has to go to town meeting for the design. And then once you get your design, you get your budget, it has to go to town meeting to approve the budget, and it has to go to the ballot as well. So there's 4 or 5 key votes that have to happen in Yarmouth for the thing to move along. And I think I'm just happy now that we've had a level of discussion at this very base level to discuss how we're going to approach it with the SBA. And I really don't think that there's any harm. It's almost an aside, but I thought it was a very innovative idea that Selectman Post indicated that perhaps we should, in a very polite way, let the folks in Dennis know that there is a potential idea out there if there was a 50-50 split, if there was any appetite through this process to look at bringing the two elementary schools together. And I certainly understand that there's, you know, would be, it's a heavy lift. You know, it's a difference in the percentage contribution. It's the potential loss of a community school. It may not happen, but, you know, these are the things, that type of communication, just like our communications have been, you know, wide open and transparent with the school committee. I think district-wide, you know, we continue that and, you know, put innovative ideas on the table and see if there's any desire to do that. And if, you know, if not, you know, we're still prepared to address our obligations from the Yarmouth standpoint. But I would like to see us respond together, but with our eyes open. And I think we're going to have to be careful not to let the SBA dictate the process to us just because they control the funding. This is a local decision, and it needs to be made locally.
Yeah, and not even sure how I can. I'll give a little thought on how to have the conversation with Dennis. The other consideration, I would say, is that's roughly a 1,200 kid elementary school, which isn't impossible, but pre-K to 3, that's a lot of pre-K to 3. Just thinking about it from a school operations side, it's not a mall, right? When you have that many kids at the 8, I ran a 650 pre-K to 2 school. Just a level of care that is needed for kids at that age.
But if you left Station Ave where it is and just did that,
Oh, you're talking about combining, because they're,
schools that need it.
yeah, maybe. I'll be interested to see.
Throw an application in?
No, so that I'd have to, because that building, even though it's older, is actually in better shape. What it needs is, its boilers are about 20 years past the life expectancy, and so is their HVAC system, but the roof doesn't leak. So, and it's built out of solid brick. It's like what is it, Three Little Pigs, right? It's the brick house,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's like that.
Good bones, they
yeah, it's
say.
good bones, right? Yeah. I lost my train of thought because I got on the Three Little Pigs.
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult, and we don't want to complicate the matter, but I think for the sake of communication, you know, it'd be interesting to see what their viewpoints on that school in the future are, and that way, if we enter into it, you know, doing our own thing, at least, you know, we know that helps.
So it'd be like one regional elementary school and then one Yarmouth-based elementary school. I'm just trying to picture
Yeah, and I
this.
don't even know if that's a bad idea, but it just, I was very intrigued by that observation that, you know, our neighbors have an old school as well, and I think that, you know, it's just an interesting point, and I really don't know.
Yeah, you get more, you know, what's the word? You know, the bigger the project, the more savings there is. Instead of, you know, building 2 elementary schools, we've been dealing with the same thing with wastewater. Instead of building 2 plants, we were trying to build 1 for 3 towns, and now we're building 3 plants, which is not the most cost-effective way to do things. Again, I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around whether or not the taxpayers can support 100% of a new school. And, you know, not to go back in history like I always do, but they didn't vote for the last one. And
My understanding, that was largely over the percentage breakdown,
There
right?
there was discussions on trying to change the regional agreement at that point in time.
Right, and that's why it's set at a different rate than other capital projects, because that, the debt for that project is different than other debt
Tried-
projects.
Yeah, we
It's
tried to.
65, 35 split,
65-35, yes.
which is not the way the student population breaks out.
Correct. But we were trying to get to 50-50 on the
Correct.
building. But we didn't want to lose the SBA money, but again, it mushroomed out of our control.
But that's my understanding, like, the suit wasn't over not building the project, it was over funding of the project. It's then the split between the 2 towns.
Kind of both, I thought.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the taxpayers of Yarmouth didn't vote for it. The taxpayers of Dennis voted for it. You know, so to me, it was a little bit of taxation without representation, and, you know, the minority dictated to the majority. That's how it ended up coming out. I just, whether it is or not, it was a lot of money for the taxpayers, and to build another school, I think it's gonna be tough. So I think we need to look at alternatives.
I think that's what the feasibility study will do. So, you know, we're not necessarily saying that you have to make a decision for the town. We're just asking for, you know, the guidance and advice that you guys would support the idea of a feasibility study to include consolidation of the schools. If we're decided to put in, obviously, then as Mr. Rittenhour said, it would then go to the town to vote to approve that amount. And then we would go through the same process on Monday to approve it as well, or at least discuss it. Again, it's ultimately up to you guys if you would like to support the idea of it.
So, do we support the idea?
I'm on board.
Tracy?
I think there's no harm in moving forward at this point. Yeah, yes.
Joyce? And I'm a yes.
Okay.
So-
So we appreciate your support on Monday. We will bring this up to our full board, and conclusion of that, we will send our response to MSBA as a joint team.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
befo-
your time.
Before we conclude, I just want to just commend you folks for having this discussion with us. I think it's very, very important that when, from a communications point of view, when there's a change in our understanding about things with respect to the state and how they're going to fund this and approach this, I think it's wonderful that we can get together and have this kind of exchange. So I appreciate very much your being here and being here with the other school committee members. I think this has been a very, very helpful, very, very good conversation. So thank you.
I think that Mark's really speaking for the board on that one. You know, this openness is definitely something that we would encourage and would like to participate in as well, because a lot of times sharing that communication can, you know, that you both come in thinking one thing, but then as you communicate, you find out, well, you know what, there is a common ground.
Yeah.
And we don't have to always be in a lawsuit or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this to Mr. Rittenhour, and so I would just open this up to the board. You know, personally, I'm at the service of the residents of Yarmouth and the residents of Dennis. So, you know, anytime you have information or questions about the school district, I'm happy to come. So please invite me anytime you want to discuss the school district. It's ultimately what they pay me for. So please invite me anytime you have questions. And I think I would agree. I think the only way we're going to move forward is to ultimately work together on these projects. I know, I think I said the last time I was here, as a school district, I know like the governance model, because it's set up as a region, is a little different than if it was just a straight municipal school district operating inside the town of Yarmouth, or a straight municipal school district operating inside the Dennis. And we are the municipal government. We're part of the municipal government. We just happen to stretch across both towns, right? We're one of the largest employees of municipal employees for both towns. We operate probably the largest amount of municipal property, taxpayer property, square footage, acreage, right? So we're responsible for and care for a significant amount of taxpayer property, and we take that responsibility very seriously. At least I mean, I know the school committee does. I know, and speaking for myself, I take that part of my job very seriously. So it's very important to me to make sure we have. That's why I think like the feasibility study is important, because you go through the process, you lay all the options on the table, and then you have a conversation about it. So the more conversation to me, the better.
Tomas Tolentino, thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate you taking the time.
No, I appreciate it. As I said, Mr. Glynn is our liaison, and he's always on remote when he can't make it in person, and, you know, he can answer questions, and he gives all the information to us when we're unable to watch. But I appreciate you having me here today, too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
just add one more thing. And if any select board member would like to tour any of the schools to further understand, I know we had some conversation about maybe worried or wondering about space. I'm happy to take anybody on a tour of the district at any time too, because I can assure you we are using every inch of the district. But if you would like to see it for yourself, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to bring you around at any time.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is to the wastewater contract bids.
Madam
Jeff?
Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay. Noting that Tracy Post will be recusing from this decision. Hello, Jeff.
Yes, good evening. Jeff Colby, Public Works Director. I'm here tonight to build upon that presentation from a couple of weeks ago about the wastewater update. We had talked about me bringing back the budget numbers to you and the contractors associated with each contract for your endorsement and hopefully authorization of the town administrator to enter into contracts with these contractors. As I mentioned in the update 2 weeks ago, we got some very good bids here, and we're excited to be moving all of these contracts forward. What I want to say about the wastewater budget sheet that's in the packet, that is very similar to the state revolving fund budget that they develop and require us to manage to. So the way it's set up with regards to the contracts and the contingencies and the other costs associated with police details and paving and eligible costs, which are in the wastewater column, and ineligible costs, which are in the water column, is very similar to the way that the state revolving fund tracks that. But in talking with the town administrator, I understand that it would make it a lot clearer to have a contractor associated with that. So I've updated those spreadsheets, and hopefully you had those at your place tonight as we talk this through. I think that is a great idea. It's just that many of the budget sheets that we have don't necessarily have that component broken out, but I'll walk you through where we stand with regards to the spreadsheets and assure you that we have much more detailed spreadsheets that support all of the expenses associated with these. I just thought that in talking through this with the board, this would be an appropriate level to discuss all of the numbers and to show where everything is coming from with regards to the $207 million for wastewater and the $15.6 million for water that's been appropriated by town meeting. So just walking through that, and please stop me as I go through these if you have any questions at all. But contract number 1 is for $97,550,151. That includes a base bid, which is the facility itself, as well as 2 different alternates. We structured a couple of these with alternates so that in case the bids came in high, we could still afford to do the required work and had the potential for some alternates to potentially be cut. And the treatment plant was one of those. When you're designing a $100 million project, there is the potential for things to come in higher than is expected. The 2 alternates involve denitrification filters, which I think is an important component because we're doing this as an environmental project to enhance the removal of nitrogen. So I think that's an alternate that we would recommend accepting. And the second alternate is a relatively modest vehicle storage building to house 4 or 5 wastewater vehicles as part of the project. The low bidder for that contract number 1 was C.H. Nickerson. We have dedicated, based upon the full budget document you see here, a percentage contingency. SRF requires at least a 5% contingency for all of these, but because there is some, we got attractive bids, we have some flexibility to recommend a higher contingency. So on the treatment facility itself, we are recommending an 8% contingency just to make that as supportable as possible going forward. Again, this is something that wouldn't be used if it's not necessary. That's why it's a contingency, but it allows us some flexibility in case there are unforeseen conditions that occur during the construction of that facility. Contract number 2.
Why don't we just stop at
Sure.
contract 1? Does any Any of the board members have any questions on contract one?
I don't.
My only question in any of this is, we're planning on doing a vote, correct, Bob?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is making sure that if there's any need to be overly specific or detailed in a vote, or do we can have one overall vote at the very end to accept the bids essentially as presented. So I'm looking for some guidance. Should we be taking these up and voting them on them individually, or should we be doing them as in an aggregate at the end? What do you think?
Vote them separately.
Okay.
The next two have already been voted and approved, so they don't need it. So there's only like 4 votes.
Okay.
And they're all big, and
Yes.
The one thing I will say about that first contract, I should have mentioned this before, there's no ineligible cost, there's no water component to that. That's why that column is blank. So these are all SRF eligible costs for that contract.
Okay.
That's great. So the award essentially for contract 1, the WRRF, is to C.H. Nickerson, that's the company, in the amount of, now is it 90, is it, what's, I'm assuming it's each of those numbers added up, correct?
it's just 97550 151.
Then that's the one. Then I would move that we approve the award of that contract to C.H. Nickerson, $97,550,151.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to contract 2.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Contract 2 is Route 28 and Old Main Street. This is a contract that's currently being worked by Robert B. Auer. That low bid for the wastewater was $16,298,843. There is a component in this one, as in several of the others, of ineligible costs, so there is a water component associated with that. That's the second column that's highlighted. And that price for the water itself is $3,576,775. And as the town administrator just mentioned, that contract's already been awarded and it's moving forward, but it's important to note all of these costs so you can see where the full budget breakdown is with regards to the full amounts, as I mentioned before, the full $207 million for wastewater and the full $15.6 million for water. These are all components of those. So
How far into contract 2 are we?
approximately 50%. This is something we talked about 2 weeks ago when we showed the full map, and they are making excellent progress and are approximately 50% done with the collection system, the pipe in the road work, which is ahead of schedule, and that's going well.
And budget-wise, it looks like they're staying within budget?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Contract 3?
The contract 3 is Route 28 and South Shore Drive. That's been awarded to Rivoli Construction. The breakdown of that particular contract is $14,967,117 for the wastewater, the SRF eligible costs. There is a water cost that's ineligible, not going through the SRF program. The town is borrowing and paying for that through the water revenues. And that number is $3,028,645. That also is underway right now and is closer to 25% complete for that project. There's a lot more piping to do. There are some more significant areas to dewater closer to the ocean, which is a particular challenge. That contract's being currently worked and is on budget and on time. They're just not as far ahead as that other contract was.
Okay. Contract 4?
Contract 4 is Route 28. That is, I put North Main Street there just to help describe where that location is. That is really the project limits of the Bass River Bridge project, which incidentally is currently advertised. So that's good news that the Mass DOT is moving that project forward. And the bid openings for the Bass River Bridge project are in November, just for point of reference. But the reason we broke that out separately from a wastewater standpoint is we want to get the pipes in the ground before they really get geared up to do the bridge and the road work associated with that project. So that low bid for contract 4 was Robert B. Auer, and the wastewater eligible costs for that are $2,443,768. And so that is the SRF eligible cost. There is an amount that's really just a placeholder at this point for the ineligible water costs, because water is going to be done in conjunction with the MassDOT project. So we will end up paying that, but through the MassDOT process. They're going to administer that project for us, which is a huge help and assistance to us, and will actually save us significant money in not having to repave and reconstruct the roadway as part of that project. So we're continuing to participate with MassDOT with the water component. We would have preferred to do that with wastewater as well, but because of the time frame and the requirements to award all of these SRF costs by October 31st, we had to break that out separately and award that separately. So that is one that we would like the board to vote on that has not been awarded. That's contract 4. We have a slightly lower contingency that we're recommending there because there is, it's a slightly smaller project, and they're also beginning that right away. The contingency, I should have mentioned, for contracts 2 and 3 that's being recommended is a little bit higher because there was some delay in beginning those costs. So there was a change order associated with both of those contracts for the delay in starting from when the contracts were bid until we actually awarded and gave a notice to proceed because of the delays in the permitting with DEP. But we're past those now, but that's why we are recommending a higher level of contingency for that. But feel that for the next couple contracts, the 7% contingency, again, is adequate. SRF requires a minimum of 5%, and 7 is kind of, still gives us some additional comfort, if you will.
Okay. Any further questions from the board on contract 4? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve contract 4.
Do I have a second on that
Second.
motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contract 5?
Contract 5 is Route 28, this section between the Parkers River Bridge and the Barnstable Town Line is such a large section, we broke it into 2 separate contracts. So the middle is Higgins Kroll Road. So contract number 5 is from the Parkers River Bridge to Higgins Kroll Road. The low bid for that contract was Robert B. Auer, and the numbers associated with that were $15,980,704 for the SRF eligible costs, which are the wastewater costs. And the water ineligible costs for contract 5 are $3,097,579. Again, the 7% contingency is what we're recommending there, and is consistent with the other wastewater contracts that we're just starting now. So that's one that also we'd like the board to support.
Any questions on contract 5? I'd entertain a motion.
I move we approve contract 5.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contract 6?
Right, contract 6 is the next segment, which is Route 28 from that Higgins Kroll Road to the Barnstable Town Line. The low bid for that contract was Diggett Construction, and the numbers associated with that contract are $15,103,889 for the SRF eligible wastewater contracts. There are, just to note, there are 2 pump stations, relatively small, but 2 pump stations as part of that contract. And the ineligible costs, which are the water component, is $215,133. And that does have a base bid and alternates associated with it, but it really was segments of collection system that were designated as alternates just in case the bids came in high and we had to cut off pieces to do. But because we got attractive bids for all of these contracts, we're able to recommend doing all of them. So we're recommending accepting all of the alternates associated with that particular contract, which are in the numbers that I just mentioned.
Excellent. Any questions on contract 6? Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve contract 6.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, and the kind of the last wrap up here that I'd like to bring to your attention with regard to other costs associated with this overall budget. is construction administration. It's been kind of lumped together here rather than individual collection system contracts, just because that's the form that we develop with contracts 2 and 3. And the components of those are CDM Smith's designer review, submission and submittal process, and construction phase services, as well as Wright Pierce, who are our owner project manager. They actually have all of the inspectional services with regards to the RPRs, the resident project representatives that are within the Wright Pierce contract. So each one of those that you see construction administration has those two components, and it's broken out roughly 50% in each based upon the scope of work for each of those. So those are all SRF eligible costs and are in that column with wastewater. Other things that are SRF eligible include police details and flaggers, which is really the same line item, and the final paving, final trench patch, if you will. Those are all SRF eligible costs. For police details, we're budgeting $3.5 million. They've come in a little bit ahead of what we'd initially planned for in the original SRF filing, but within this budget, we've bumped that up slightly to cover some of those additional costs, as well as the final paving costs of just shy of $6.5 million. That's really the final trench patching, because for Route 28, we do not need to do a curb-to-curb resurfacing because of follow-on Mass DOT projects that are happening throughout the corridor. So that's a budget savings for us. I know that looks like a big number for final paving, but it would be much higher if we had to do a full curb-to-curb paving on Route 28, which we don't have to do per our permit. So those are the things I wanted to draw your attention to. I also want to mention that in those SRF eligible components, we do have the 0% interest, as well as the debt forgiveness component to that. So that's a good thing. Right now, we're at 6.6% debt forgiveness. And then the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust, of course, is funding 25% of our costs associated with the SRF eligible costs in that wastewater column as it stands today. So that's all good news, and just wanted to mention that because that's a cost share component that will help ease the burden of some of these numbers you're seeing today. So I think those are the things I wanted to highlight. Happy to answer any questions you might have about this.
Jeff, I note that we have in the audience some distinguished guests, representatives of these fine companies that the board has just awarded major contracts to. I thought maybe you could help introduce them a little, and I'd like to, if the principals are here, have them meet the board at least, so we have a face-to-face, so when we meet in court, we'll know each other. We won't be doing that.
No!
I do think we have a representative of Diggett Construction here. Is that Carrie is here? Yeah.
Dennis Company, it's good to have you on board.
Thank you.
Welcome, Carrie.
We have a representative of C.H. Nickerson. Is there anyone here from them? No. And I think that's about it. I don't think we have anybody from Rivoli or Robert B. Auer here.
Well, thanks for coming out. Mr.
Thank you,
Diggett.
appreciate your taking the time.
I'd happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I think now that we've met him, we know who to contact if we have traffic problems, right? Or construction delays. No, the only comment that I'd like to make is, once again, I think it's just in the interest of keeping the voters of Yarmouth informed, in the interest of transparency, I think it's important to have these kinds of public discussions in these kinds of presentations and deliberations. So once again, I just want to tip my hat to the administration for doing this. I think it's important for people to know how their tax dollars are being spent, what they're being spent on, and that we can deliberate and discuss these things out in the open so that everybody can be on top of what's going on. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, really appreciate it.
Great, thank you very much, and we'll update you on how this budget is going at our next wastewater update. So, thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
helpful tabulation.
Okay, our next item that was on the agenda was to discuss the volunteer fair for attracting committee members. But we also had an item for 7:15, and of course now it's 7:45. request for lease of town property from Cape and Islands Mitsubishi. So if it's all right with the board, I'd like to take those out of sync, and we'll ask for the request for lease of town property from Cape and Islands Mitsubishi, Workshop Road, South Yarmouth.
This is rather late. I don't know if you have copies of the letter and the exhibit. You do, okay. I went ahead and took the liberty.
Oh, we have it. Yep,
Let's go to another page.
thank you.
Page that shows the whole parcel, so they requested a portion of a parcel.
This, we do. If you'd like to start by introducing yourselves, please.
My name is Jeff Bellis. I'm here speaking on behalf of Mr. Demir, who's the owner, president of Cape and Islands Mitsubishi. I'm a lawyer and attorney. Feel free to call me Jeff or whatever you prefer, but we're here.
Okay, you said it, you said it.
Well, I know.
Careful what you say.
I wore an extra shirt, so. So in any event, we're here this evening to request a carve-out of a portion of a parcel that had previously been awarded on a lease. As I understand it, it was to a solar company. They were going to put panels on a big portion of this town property. The economy went against them, and they weren't able to fulfill their obligations. As part of their master lease, there was a carve-out sublease for Cape and Islands of 1 acre for him to expand his lot. When that all fell apart, Cape and Islands no longer had access to the 1 acre lot. Mr. Demir needs it because the master franchisor, Mitsubishi North America, Mitsubishi USA, is insisting and has been insisting for a number of years now that he expand his lot to include more new cars, right? Currently, everybody drives by it. There's a lot of trucks, a lot of pickup trucks. They sell, people love them. It's not really helping Mitsubishi North America. They want him to have Mitsubishi cars on his lot. And he wants to stay where he is. It's a great location. He likes it. He's settled in. He's been there, 8 years now?
8 years at that location.
At that location.
10 years in Yarmouth.
Right. So we're here asking the board for them to begin, and it's kind of convoluted because it's an RFP for a portion of a parcel, is what we're looking for. It's 1 acre is essentially what the concept is calling for. That's my summary, and I don't know if there's questions or if I missed something.
Tracy?
I have questions, but it's mostly of Bob to talk about how we got here, because last I knew we were on a different plan.
Right. Now, let me first confirm, I became aware of this issue practically day one when I first arrived here. Mr. Ed Centeo, our finance director, was managing the project to move forward with the lease of the overall, it's quite a large piece of property there for the solar farm. And I can confirm that he did have that lease arrangement structured such that he had the request from Cape and Islands Mitsubishi and wrote it into the documents such that the solar company would be having a sublease of a small piece of property for the Mitsubishi dealer to store some of their cars. So that was a way of taking advantage of the single procurement, having the lease go to the solar developer, and being able to take care of the Mitsubishi issue at the same time. And what has happened since then is that the firm that did the bid for the initial lease, because of financial changes in the solar market, was unable to fulfill their obligations under the lease to develop that entire parcel. And so in the meantime, we had been contacted, I think a few different times, by Mr. Demir on behalf of the Mitsubishi dealer that what does he do now that he's in danger of losing that location for not having enough space for the Mitsubishi cars. And so he kind of got stuck in the shuffle. So what the town is faced with is there's the immediate issue of the small parcel adjacent to the Mitsubishi to see if there is any appetite on behalf of the town to, it would have to be a totally separate procurement to potentially lease a small area for the vehicle storage. That's issue number one. And then issue number two, I think there's a much bigger issue with the town meeting. The select board already went to town meeting to get the approval of the voters to lease the whole parcel. And it doesn't say it has to be for X use or Y use. It's just the board has the authority to lease that parcel. Now, I think that there's a future discussion that's a much bigger discussion as to whether the town wishes to issue another RFP for that entire site. And I personally wouldn't do a one for solar. I would look for a different direction. This is very difficult, and we've had these discussions at the board level. I think many times Mr. Centella was in here, and I think the board expressed a lot of concerns about cutting down all of the trees on that lot for solar. And so it, I think there's going to have to be a lot more discussion if the town wants to initiate another RFP for the remainder of that lot. But we had been contacted by Mr. Demir, who, again, got kind of caught short in the whole process. And I just think he needs to know from the town if there's any interest so that he can do his own future planning. And I would say I have discussed the matter with the property owner that leases to Mr. Demir, which is the Davenport Company, and they're aware of it, have indicated that they would not have any problems with it. And I discussed it with the building commissioner as well, and he's aware of it, reviewed all of the special permits, and has indicated that, his office doesn't, have any problems. But it really is up to the select board if there's an appetite to kind of do that. And, I suppose the reasoning would be involved with, he seems to be indicating, and I think they can give us a little more clarity on this, that the present parcel alone, and it is a little bit of a challenge shape of a lot there, doesn't appear to be large enough to support that Class 1 dealership under the, his own obligations on a long-term basis. So he's indicated he might have to, move to a different location, which, in which case we lose one of our only Class 1 dealerships.
So how does this affect our plan for the bigger picture, though? Are we being short-sighted, meaning we don't know with the contiguous property that's still there, is the anaerobic digester off the table, also the whole energy park, or just the solar piece?
Just the solar piece. And the solar piece had, it's a very large lot that had that, acre area was just buffer zone to anything. And I think that would still be you'd have adequate, be able to have adequate buffers, and, you'd still have 85 acres out there. And so it wouldn't impact, there's some questions on that anaerobic digester project, whether that, the finances of that seem to have changed as well. And I know the finance director we've recently been looking at has a lot of concerns whether that is truly a beneficial project for the town to bring in the septic waste of all of the other towns in our region, and what benefits do we get for that. So I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen on that.
But the town staff doesn't feel that this 1 acre is going to impact
No.
any of our other plans or potential uses
No.
for that. Okay. And so to our same point, though, about the highway and the trees, I know that the solar parcel was much larger. What's your vision? What's the vision of the off-ramp visually?
So even though this says highway, the off-ramp actually is much farther away.
So visually, there's there's
No.
a buffer.
No, it's, when they designed this, they designed it based on knowing that they have to be a certain amount away from
Okay.
the office, so you won't even see it, because where the lot cuts off the triangle, if you've ever come off the highway, it's a good 50 feet, 100 feet before you see any of my vehicles.
How long is your lease there? You're looking for a 10-year option with the town. What's your lease on the property now?
It's coming up soon, so I kind of have to make a decision on if I'm staying. I've been putting Mitsubishi off since 2018, and they left me alone during COVID, and now they're putting pressure on me again to,
So in terms of access, though, if you no longer lease the parcel, how does this piece, it doesn't have its own access.
are you
Right, so-
talking about the triangle?
I'm talking about if you choose not to have a lease with Davenport for this parcel anymore, what happens with this piece?
Well, no, if you folks, if I could pull this off, then I'm re-signing my lease. So I would have two leases, one with the town and one with the Davenports. I'd like to obviously stay, I'm been here for a long time, so before I sign, I wanted to just see if I could put this together first.
But just, to kind of clarify that point, what, you're willing to stipulate that if you close down the Mitsubishi at the current location, that the back property, well, I think what we're saying is we'd like that to revert to the town. We don't want you to move it from one location to the other. That, what,
no.
we're saying it's contingent upon remaining that operation where it is, that would facilitate that, not be in lieu of it.
Correct. I'm looking to sign a lease so that the two leases are expiring about the same time, and then I could go to Florida.
Wait, what?
I don't want to do this forever, 15, 20
You're
years.
so young. All right. That's all the questions I have for now.
Mark?
My only question is one for Bob, and that is this a sole source procurement?
No, it's not going to be a sole source procurement. I think that, in all sincerity, what we would have to do, and we would seek the approval of the select board, it would be to initiate an RFP for the use of this parcel. It does have limited access, and, and I think that we can establish some conditions that don't make it exclusive in any fashion, but,
Okay, that answers my question, because typically when a municipality's in the business of entertaining a lease, oftentimes we have to go through a procurement process. So he just answered my question by suggesting, yes, we will. We'll issue an RFP, we'll identify the parcel, and then have to go through that process. It's difficult in many cases for a municipality to have a sort of a sole source procurement without any kind of bidding process at all. So that answers my question. I'm very comfortable going forward with that kind of process.
Great.
To work this out.
Joyce?
Thank you. I just have a question for Mr. Demir. I noticed we talked a little bit about barriers, borders, the kinds of things that help shield a zillion cars from human eyes. I live in South Yarmouth, and I drive by there every day. Will I still see some trees?
Yes, if you look closely at the design.
I saw we had some little tree drawings.
Right, so there's probably, based on the bylaws, when I worked with the building commissioner, this is the amount of trees I need to put up. And it's a pretty good chunk. It takes away about 20% of my parking. But it's required to have those trees planted. So what you're gonna see is trees and beautiful lights and shiny new cars and a thriving old business of Yarmouth as soon as you get off the highway.
Well, and I think, trees make a lovely complement to shiny new cars. You'll probably sell more with more trees.
Everyone wants to go electric and be green, so kind of goes with the theme.
Thank you.
Okay, so what would we, as a board here, have to do?
So at this point, we just would need the board's approval to prepare an RFP. And that, we can even bring a copy of the draft back and have you look at that and approve that. And that way, it's a competitive procurement. You issue that, and then the proposals would come back to the board for award. And you could still, at that point, reject any bids if you didn't like the terms. And maybe we could, include a little more detailed site planning, make sure that the departments that, do that, weigh in, and then if, at that point, the next step after that would be a lease would come
Sure.
after the procurement is all approved.
What's,
This parcel was looked at by the town and the departments before we brought it to town meeting as a potential lease.
Correct.
So
Not as a, yeah,
What's
not as
the
a purchase, but as a
yeah,
lease.
what's the street address, Bob,
It is,
of the parcel in question?
can you help us out? What's your address?
My parcel where the dealership is.
Not yours, the one that,
He's
because I want to
directly
make a
next-
motion to put out an RFP.
527 Station Ave.
What is?
527 Station Ave.
All right, Madam Vice Chair, I want to make a motion, and I'm moving that we authorize the town administrator to put out to bid, or put out an RFP for the leasing of 525
527.
Station Ave.
But that might be the Mitsubishi, is that your Mitsubishi
That's
address?
the Mitsubishi.
That's leasing it to himself.
Yeah, well, that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is the address of the property in question.
What you need is a book and parcel. So the lease area would be Assessor's Map 97, Parcel 6. That's the piece that we're looking at, the lease area.
97 parcel 6 is the actual.
Okay, then I'll incorporate that in my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. Get to Florida yet?
I'll be here for a while. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. You guys, see you.
Okay, Joyce, would you mind waiting with yours
No,
to let
I
Mary?
think I'm going to be here for a while anyway. I suggest we let Mary get home.
Okay, then let's,
Mary's here, she's on Zoom at home.
Mary was watching from Zoom upstairs.
okay, so our next item on the agenda then will be the fall election matters, and
Yes. Thank you, Mary Maslowski, Town Clerk. So this is our traditional letter that comes to you for every election. There are two main motions that we need for you folks to vote on tonight. The first is to assign the police officers back to assign the assignment of the police officers back to the police chief and myself. The second is to vote on the ballot warrant for the November state election. So both of those motions are in the letter. I would also just like to take the opportunity to tell people that the ballots did arrive today, thank goodness. So we will be working to get the vote-by-mail ballots out. It will likely take us about a week to get the 6,000 ballots out into the mail. However, if there is anybody that is leaving town beforehand and they wish to come in and vote, they're not going to be available on November 5th. They are welcome to come in and vote this week and next week. In-person early voting doesn't start until October 19th. As you all know, that will be set up down here for 2 solid weeks before the November 5th state election. However, if there's anybody that is leaving town, they are welcome to come in. We'll just ask them to fill out an absentee application, and they'll be able to vote at the counter.
are there any corrections needed to the ballot, or is the ballot as printed?
So far, we have not found any errors. It is as
That's a
pres-
miracle.
as-
That's good to hear.
I make a motion that the Select Board hereby delegate its authority given under Chapter 92, Section 72 of the Acts of 2022 to detail a sufficient number of police officers or constables for each building that contains the polling places for one or more precincts at every election herein to preserve order and to protect the election officers and supervisors from interference with their duties and to aid in enforcing the laws relating to elections to the Chief of Police in consultation with the Town Clerk.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
I make a motion that the Select Board adopt the warrant for the November 5th, 2024 Massachusetts state election presented by the town clerk and directed that the warrant be duly advertised and posted in accordance with Mass General Laws, the Town of Yarmouth Charter, and bylaws.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. You've got quite a bit of work ahead of you.
We'll get
You
it
and your
done.
team.
We will get it done, and we'll be back the end of the month to see you on other matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Joyce, our next item is discussion of the volunteer fair for attracting committee members.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. This will be short and sweet. I've talked to a number of people who have applied through the process. We've had a flurry of applications recently, and with that feedback, I've decided we need two halves of the volunteer fair to get two different populations. I'd like to propose that we have the fair on November 21st so that we can take advantage of having a flyer and an announcement at the special town meeting. And I'd like to propose that the two parts of the fair be from 9 to 11 a.m. in this hearing room, and then for people who are working 9 to 5 and might skew to a different age, 4 to 6 in room A. It'll be a smaller group, and this room will be in use then.
And what does it entail, Joyce? The fair?
My notion is to have representatives of every committee there to chat with prospective applicants, even committees that don't have, like we just finished filling conservation, the last meeting, even if they don't currently have openings, to give an idea of what those committees do, have an informal session. It gets to people to town hall. I started to think that that was preferable to the senior center, just so people would have a sense where people come for committees and maybe acclimate them a little. And then the idea would be a flyer, which is currently in preparation by staff, and the personal interaction, so people might be able to see with whom they'd like to work, say if they were qualified in overlapping areas, and essentially cheerleading for new volunteers and introducing them to the town. And I'm hoping that putting it on social media, but also having that important flyer at the special town meeting at a table will help build numbers for this.
And who would you see organizing this fair?
Me?
That was my question.
Go ahead and volunteer. Anyone else? I see someone in the audience with a hand up. No?
Okay. And what would you need from this board?
I guess just a general blessing and a modest money for refreshments. I picture pastries and coffee for the morning session and, some sort of late afternoon snack for the 4 to 6.
And from a monetary perspective, Bob, how would that work? I mean, is that something that's available, money's available now in, say, the administration budget, or?
Yes, we can cover the cost of refreshments and also assist in the, administrative setup of it.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, well,
So
any,
just beat the bushes and find people and bring them.
any comments, Mark?
No,
Tracy?
sounds good.
Sounds good, Joyce. I will tell you that my sister brought back a flyer from the Eastham Public Library that listed out all of the committees that are available in town and volunteer positions available.
Oh, nice.
So-
We should think of the libraries. Good idea.
Yeah, that was one thing that was out there, and certainly the backbone of our town is our volunteers, and
Yes, yes.
I think a lot of times people will say, well, nobody ever asked me, so this might be, you never know. might be a way to get them to come on down and volunteer.
Hope so.
We used to do a volunteer breakfast. Well, when
remember those.
When Eric was here, he always coordinated the volunteer breakfast. And one of the things that always was great years and years ago was Jerry Sullivan. He did a great video of interviews with different committees, because, you know, I think trying to get people in here is much different than, you know, getting it out. It played on Channel 18, and it was great because he went to each of the committees and talked about what they did and interacted and, you know, talked about how they got on. The people talked about, you know, what interested them, and we got a lot of really great positive feedback from that.
I remember this. I especially remember the last one that I was at, and Eric Tolley was chair then, and I can remember him getting up and saying, you know, your volunteers, you work for bacon, you know, referencing the breakfast.
Okay. So we'll just give you our blessing to go forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't think we need a specific motion or anything of that nature. So good luck, and thank you for the suggestion.
Thank
Would
you.
be great. Next on the agenda, we have the review draft of the special town meeting warrant. Bob?
Okay, we have the warrant pulled together. I want to single out Bill Scott for his tremendous work with all of the departments, agencies, and everyone to review all of the articles, make sure we had the right amounts and everything that people needed. We have 12 articles. I could go through them quickly, and we'll see if there's issues, concerns, questions, and then we'll talk later about the date for when it'll come back for execution. But for now, there's a placeholder for Article 1 for any prior year bills, and they're still scouring the books, but we don't have any yet, so we may lose an article, and I'd like to see that because I hate prior year bills. It's just one of my pet peeves. But so far, we haven't found any. The second article is our annual OPEB transfer from free cash in the amount of $1.2 million. I want to mention, too, is board members, I think, have seen, we did last week get our free cash certified, $11,800,000, which is consistent with our expectations, and I think it shows solid performance. So we have the free cash available to take care of the annual OPEB transfer. That's Article 2. Article 3, our funds to restore the school resource officer coverage, and these were amounts that were cut by the school department.
I cannot believe that. I'm really surprised to see this. I'm sorry, but I don't know how we got to that in this day and age. This is I think that they are extremely important. Actually, I believe that they should be in every school. And Yarmouth does, I think we have 2 and Dennis has 1. I'm not sure how, so it used to be split, and I'm not, because it was paid through the district, right?
Correct.
So these funds will be paid through Yarmouth for us to have a school resource officer in the intermediate school?
That's right.
So how does Dennis pay their portion of that? Are we asking Dennis to pay, or do they put in an officer as well?
Yeah, it's a mixed thing. I think probably the best thing would be at our next meeting to have the chief in, and we can talk about the article and what
Okay.
all of the details of it
Okay.
are. And
Because that's why it went through the district always before, so that it was split by population. And of course, they're only in schools, for the most part, that have both students in it. You know, I see here it says that it's also covering Station Ave and Emmy Small, so that's a different story if it's just in Yarmouth, but,
No, it deserves an explanation, so that's good. Let's get it on the next agenda.
so that's Article 3. And Article 4 is also from the police department, and this is to transfer the sum of $40,000 to purchase and install equipment for the leased police cruisers, and this lowers the lease, so it's a lot more money if you get it through leased. So what they want to do is, if they pay cash for the special equipment in the vehicles. You don't have to lease it and pay extra for it.
And I thought there was an article when we rented them to outfit it. Is this an overage or something? Well, we can ask him when he comes about the,
Right, I don't recall that article. I know we approved all the leases, but I don't think they approved the equipment, so. And Article 5 is for golf capital expenses. They have 3 projects that have gone through the capital program that they'd like to get accomplished prior to the next season. Some Bass River Clubhouse improvements, lightning detection system, and improvements to the Bayberry Hills patio area. And they also have had their retained earnings certified at $2,778,396. So they also continue their strong performance. And the 390 here, 390,000, would be transferred from retained earnings. That's Article 5. Article 6 is the wastewater engineering, discharge analysis, and permitting. It is portion of the overall cost of this project in at $500,000 to get us through. There will be additional work associated with that, but they need to determine their exact budget on it. But this keeps the work with the DEP for the permitting moving forward. And this would be recommended to come from the wastewater enterprise fund. That's Article 6. And then Article 7 is our annual article to continue the pre-funding for the overall financial plan. And it's $2 million from free cash, which is the amount we've been putting in every year, and $1 million from the wastewater enterprise fund to the wastewater stabilization fund. And again, we created this wastewater stabilization fund, and I thought the finance director did a great job on that. The purpose for moving the money from the wastewater enterprise fund into the stabilization fund is it can be invested at a higher rate. So it's better to have the stabilization funds that they're invested differently than the enterprise fund is counted as operating funds. And this is for long-term debt service, so the stabilization is a place for that. So $3 million into wastewater stabilization, and that's according to our plan. And Article 8 is an additional $110,000 to bring the Route 6A Village Center streetscape improvement design up to the pre-25% design submission, in the hopes that these plans are then, that will shortcut the system for getting these on the tip so that they can be, these streetscape improvements for the Route 6A historic village can be funded through the state, with the town doing the initial design work on those. And we've had a series of meetings, and I think that they have some great design work, so this will help move that forward. And that's Article 8. Article 9 are the additional funds for the Parkers River Boardwalk Park. And it is $160,000 to put partial irrigation in the park that wasn't previously funded. And so that's $160,000 from free cash. That's Article 9. Article 10 is the analysis of the PFAS groundwater contamination in the amount of $50,000, and that's seed money based on a proposal that the town has received to initiate some of those studies of the potential environmental impacts of PFAS that are not water system related. So this would be primarily starting in the Mill Creek area. They'll be studying the ecological impacts of PFAS, and this is sort of groundbreaking work that would benefit the town.
Can I just ask a question about the free cash?
Yes.
So we get a lot of free cash in here, and typically we do our free cash at our annual. So,
Not necessarily. I'm not sure I would agree with that assumption.
No, that, well, it's not the way that it's normally been done, but I'm just listening to.
so we just got our free cash certified.
Correct.
So that's what you're spending. So typically we had waited, well, and I'm sure it's probably changed, but we used to have like one slate for our free cash after the budget was done at town meeting. Now it's,
Yeah, the way I see it is we've significantly decreased the free cash spending at fall town meeting. In fact, like, this is probably an all-time low. But traditionally, Yarmouth has even an earlier free cash certification. In fact, a lot of times we, get that certified in July or August, and September this year. And there generally is some free cash spending for things that can't wait at the fall town meeting, but primarily, like the CIP, all of that stuff, we hold it back for most of the, and I like to consolidate as much as we can under the capital improvement program at the annual town meeting. So we've just sort of scaled back for the things that we need to get us through.
right, so can we get like just a list, a picture of where we are, what we have, what we're gonna have left over?
Oh, sure.
That'd be great. I just don't feel like I have a picture of what we have.
I think in the past, and the reasons why we may not have done it in the fall and focused largely on the annual is because we went through a period of time where we just didn't have many
No, I know,
fall
but
town
right
meetings.
now I feel like we're taking it out, and in my mind, we always had the capital and all
also
the
in
other
the-
things. I wanna make sure that,
Yeah, but also in the past, we didn't have much free cash either. So we're in a very different situation right now, the way the town's been managed. Did Bill have something?
If I may, all of these are already in the CIP process, so what we do is track the fall town meeting is fiscal year 2025 and then 2026, and the spreadsheet shows both runs, so,
I'd just like to see it.
right,
That'd be great.
Thank you.
yeah, we can give them that.
So we're thinking about, what Bill said, we're thinking about the fall in conjunction with the spring as well.
Same time.
And trying to be as conservative as we can on the overall spending at the same time. And then,
Thank you.
after Article 10, there are two proposed zoning articles. I think you've seen the drafts before. The first one is the affordable housing calculation of cash payment in lieu of affordable units for local initiative projects. So the way that's calculated is going to be more related to the modern-day cost of these units. So that's an improvement in that calculation, and the methodology, I think, is outlined in the article. And Article 12 is, I think, a further restriction of seasonal employee housing at motels and hotels, which proposes that special permits or variances won't exceed the 15% cap that currently exists. You follow that? So you can't exceed the 15% cap through a variance. So that's a further restriction of,
So we're making it more difficult for employers to house,
They're seasonal employees?
yeah,
yes.
why,
Yeah.
what's the logic behind that? I mean,
I
we
think
have a
it-
huge workforce
Yeah.
housing problem, and why would we want to limit the ability of businesses to?
And this is a recommendation from the planning board. My understanding is that the genesis was complaints that they had received from people that don't feel that the hotels and motels should have a lot of seasonal housing in it, but there's no other options. So,
Yeah, I'll say right off the bat, they're gonna have a hard time selling this one, at least with this selectman. Because the reality is, I mean, we have a housing crisis in this community, and from my point of view, the best place to actually provide housing for seasonal workers is with the employers.
Property.
They can essentially provide the supervision, they can make sure that the units are kept up. Obviously, I'd be concerned about the loss of units that are available for, let's say, motels or hotels, but the reality is this is a crisis, and, I'm sorry people are complaining, but I think we really want to spend some time on this particular article and really get it fully vetted.
so, and the planning board is going to be before this board to explain the articles, and
Well, they have to have their own public hearing, correct? That
Yes.
hasn't,
Yeah.
They require a public hearing, and they have to make a recommendation. And We were gonna try to have them in tonight, but they haven't had their public hearing yet,
Yeah.
so they wanted to have the public hearing and then get a better sense for their process, so I think they're scheduled for the next meeting. And that's it.
In order for us really to follow the process, we need to have a meeting on October 22nd to execute the town meeting warrant, don't we? We can't wait till our next meeting on the 29th.
Yes, I would request that we have a meeting on October 22, if for no other reason than to approve the warrant. That way, it should be published by that 29th, not approved. So,
And we could have the police chief come in at October 22nd, since that is regarding the special town meeting warrant, to discuss that, those two articles.
So the 22nd, I think that's the same night as the Chamber of Commerce dinner. What's that?
I have something in my calendar, but
Yeah, and I'm unavailable I may be unavailable that night.
We would not have a majority.
what about the 15th?
We typically don't meet after the
Holiday.
weekend. Yeah, and I'm not available on the 15th either. See, what I do is I try to get the select board meetings locked into my calendar ahead of time so that I can fill up all the other dates, so I'm somewhat limited in October right now.
I just have a question about the warrant and the procedure. We do have it on the agenda tonight. Would it be possible for us to vote that tonight? Approval of the warrant without getting into whether we approved of individual articles?
Is the petition time passed?
yes, all the deadlines are passed, and this, if you want to keep these 12 articles, you could vote to approve and execute the warrant tonight.
But we can't change it.
We wouldn't be able
We
to.
wouldn't be able to change the warrant. So that's why we just had it on. This was our first review of it. If there was another night sometime before the 29th,
Is the 22nd earlier that day possible? I mean, if it's just that one vote.
Yeah, I could do that.
Earlier in the day and just one, maybe a
If
special
that- if
meeting.
that's all that's on the agenda.
I could do that.
I could do that on the 22nd. What time would we be talking about having the meeting?
Could you do it at 4?
I could do 4.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, then I would recommend that we have a meeting on the 22nd at 4 PM. We'll just have to check, hopefully this venue is available.
Happens to be a day that has a half day of school, so I won't be driving the bus.
Well,
It works for you,
we're
huh?
lucky for that. Thank you.
There you go.
Do the kids from ME Small get on the bus wet after a day there?
Do the kids get on the bus wet? No, they don't.
Just
On rainy
wondering.
days. No. Okay, so we'll have a meeting, we're going to be adding a meeting then for October 22nd at 4 o'clock, hopefully in this meeting room. And we'll also be asking the police chief to come to that meeting. So that then if there are any questions, concerns, they can be answered at that time for those two articles.
Sounds like a plan.
And if I may, the background on all the CIP items is online under the Capital Budget Committee. There's a link up at the top under FY 2026, which gives you all the profile sheets for everything that's coming in the fall town meeting and the spring.
All right. Anything else on the draft? I think we're all set on that. Joyce, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move two different appointments. The first is a new appointment to the Mid-Cape Cultural Council of Xavier MP Walker. That would be for 3 years, ending October 27, sorry.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, but I'd like to discuss this.
Okay, discussion?
In this discussion, this particular committee, aren't they involved in making awards to various organizations to help promote the arts?
They do have, I guess, a fairly modest awards for cultural grants, and then they do other things to generally encourage cultural events.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is make a request that we put this council at least on as an agenda item, so we can at least get updated from them on what they're doing.
Okay.
No, I think as it lays out in our charter, we're supposed to meet regularly with the committees, all right? So on the list of things that we have to do as select board members, one of them is that to meet with committees. And that always gets challenging because we have so many committees and our schedules, our agendas fill up. I'm not suggesting that we meet with everybody. This particular council, I don't think we've heard from anybody on this council for years. And I think, I haven't a clue as to what they're doing, but I do read about arts councils in other communities. All right, now we combined our arts council with Barnstable.
Yes.
So they're joint, they're together. So as a way to expand the pot of money. I'm just curious what the council's doing to help promote the arts in Yarmouth.
I see you're afraid it might be falling too much on the Barnstable side?
I don't know. But you know what? Part of our job is oversight and to make inquiries, and so I think we should be looking for a spot on the agenda to have this council show up and explain to us how they're working and helping promote the arts in Yarmouth.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Why don't we put it on the December 17th agenda?
That would be great.
Okay.
So,
And I assume that doesn't interfere with appointing this person, though, right?
no, not at all.
Oh, excellent.
No, I just didn't want to lose the.
Qualified. And also in
Yeah.
her 20s. Oh, my God.
There you go. Well,
Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
Aye. You have a unanimous on that one, Joyce. Next?
Okay, the next is a reappointment to the Board of Health, Eric Weston, for a 3-year term ending October 2027.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You have a unanimous on that one as well. Excellent. As someone that's been appointments chair in the past, thank you for your hard work, Joyce. I know there's more to it than people think.
It's kind of fun. Maybe an hour for today's interview was too much and meant no supper, but.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the approval for the minutes of the September 10th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those are approved. And upcoming agenda review, we just added that we'll be having a meeting on October 22nd at 4, and that the police chief will be joining us, and that will be to execute the town warrant. We have quite a list on the October 29th meeting. It looks to me like we're pretty set on that one. Bob, you don't have anything special that you need to add to the 29th?
No, we will have the planning board in, you can see on the discussion of the zoning.
We also have 6A.
And the presentation on the 6A, I think you'll find that very fascinating, too.
Okay, and then November is kind of an interesting month because we have the election on November 5th. And we have our special town meeting on November 19th, so we'll be meeting as a board at 5 o'clock that evening prior to special town meeting. And
We have to have 2 meetings per charter.
right, so my question to that would be, should we be looking at November 12th? It's another one that is just because it's the day after a holiday.
And is that a Tuesday?
That's a Tuesday.
Yeah, I think we have no choice. We have to meet before town meeting, and we have to have a discussion of the articles and at least engage in some degree of education, both for ourselves and the community, right? I mean, think about it. So.
So that
yeah.
would be our usual
I
time?
think, yeah, I think the 12th, the primary order of business on the 12th should be a review of the articles. We're gonna have to make decisions on who's gonna cover what.
Recommendations.
Right, recommendations. There may be people that we need to come before us that night to help explain themselves. So think about it.
And that is listed on the agenda for October 29th. What we can do is to move that from the agenda on the 29th to November 12th.
Well, I think you should at least have a continuation of that discussion, right? Because there are gonna be things that we need to talk about that might not get adequately covered. There may be questions that we need to get answers to, so you definitely want to have some time to cover that on the 12th. I think I have found it helpful that as a board, when we meet, it's helpful to have some meeting and some discussion before the town meeting that at least gets at least some segment of the government community thinking and preparing for town meeting. So, I mean, we used to do that on a regular basis, is always have a meeting and a discussion.
Madam Chair, after town meeting, I'd like at some point to have a report on the Green Communities Program and the progress of our second grant from that. And also a question about whether the town is still going to pursue the anaerobic digester.
Okay.
Yeah. So would you put, these are items to put on
After town meeting.
after town meeting? I have some items on after town meeting, too.
Okay, well, how about before town meeting on November 12th? We'd have the review of the articles. Is there any other item that, Bob, that we should be putting on November 12th?
Nothing I can think about right now.
Mary won't have to give us an update on what's going on had gone on with the election?
We could get an election
Update,
rundown.
probably?
Sure, that'd be great.
Well, speaking of elections,
Get another one.
We have December 7th.
well, no, didn't we have some outstanding questions about the polling locations for the
Special election.
not the special one, no, I'm talking about the November election, November 5th. Wasn't there some concern about having so much traffic? Remember the last time we had a presidential election?
That's gonna be the presidential, though, that's,
Oh, that's what I mean, that we had huge I mean, it was a mess at the senior center. And, I mean, I haven't heard any plan.
well, I heard from the school committee, at the school committee meeting, that there was a meeting between her and the chief with the schools about potential locations, but I haven't heard, I mean,
Right, and I think she was here at your last meeting and talked about it, and it was, too late to move the presidential election, and
but
board
that's the only
members.
one that needs to be moved. The
Yeah.
December 7th doesn't need to be moved.
I
It's-
think board members sort of indicated that it was kind of too late to move it, and that people would have a lot of questions and concerns, and so it was decided that she would work to develop a program to have the auxiliary parking and trim the path, and to have the golf carts, and to have the senior van, and to do the shuttling and transporting of people.
Can we get an update on that before the election?
We're gonna have the police chief here on October 22nd to talk about the town meeting
Let's get an update on that.
articles, so why don't we add that?
On the 22nd?
Yeah, of October.
I thought the 22nd was,
That was the early meeting.
yeah, that's the one at 4 that someone had said it was going to be one agenda item.
You could do it on the 29th, too.
Recommendation.
Yeah, 29th would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think, at least I received a lot of negative feedback about all the traffic, all the congestion, and the need to improve access in and out of that polling location for the next presidential election. I heard that after the last presidential election, so I'm glad she's working on something, but it might be nice to get an update so we know exactly what's being done to to improve the situation.
Okay, well, we'll put that on the October 29th agenda.
Yeah, that would be great. My three non-date specific, I would just put them at the back end. You know how we have a list of items that we should
Potentials.
potentially look up?
third-
Yep.
on the
I
third
think we
list.
need a Mass DOT update on the Route 28 construction project. Where are we with design? I mean, it's been like forever since we got the latest on that. What makes me nervous about that project is the more time flies, the more the project gets pushed off. And so,
Costs more.
and costs more, right. And then, because it costs more, then what happens is it drops in status on the on the tip. And then when it drops on the tip, it just, we, somehow, the pace of this thing has to get picked up. Because, you know, I mean,
It's already on there, Mark.
I know it's on there, but I'm saying we've got to make that a priority, because what's happening is that project keeps dropping
Yeah.
and dropping, and it's, last time I checked, I thought it was a real priority for us. So, yeah, it's there, but we need to draw attention to it. The other thing is that we were supposed to get an update on the Station Ave traffic corridor study. That was supposed to have been done by the Cape Cod Commission in December 2023. And what is it now? Okay, so here we are, it's, you know, we're in October now. It's, many months have gone by, we're almost a year behind. So the upside, the benefit of the delay is that we now have this situation unfolding involving the schools. And it may very well be that the study should examine, you know, this other scenario and perhaps discuss, or at least, I think now would be a helpful time if we're talking about one of the options in a school study, feasibility study, including a much larger project on Station Ave. I think it would be helpful to have a transportation study or the traffic study at least include that potential scenario and what we're going to be dealing with, right? So I would recommend, and maybe this is some discussion with our team, with our planning staff and the administrator, maybe some discussion with the Cape Cod Commission about examining what the scenarios that are laid out in this school feasibility study, or the likelihood of them. I don't think there's anything there's going to be anything new. I think we're going to know what the various options are. It might be helpful to get the Cape Cod Commission staff to sort of do an amendment or a change or an adjustment in their scope and what they're doing, and at least examine what's going on here. Because I think if we're going to have an intelligent conversation about options at some point, I know the consultants should be doing some analysis, but I think it might be helpful to get a head start on some of this. So I think that needs to be an agenda item, so I'd put that up there. And the other item that I would add on this, because I don't see it there, maybe I'm missing something, is the economic visioning that, you know, and the studies and the work on Route 28. You know, we've had discussions of that before. I know Bill's been working on some stuff, but, you know, at some point we got to bring that up and put that on the table and start sinking our teeth into that. So I don't know when that's going to be ready, but it should at least be on that list of at least unassigned agenda items. So I would definitely put that there and elevate it.
Any other?
Well, that's it for now.
Tracy?
I have a whole list of things that aren't on there from our goal setting thing that didn't make it on here, that we identified that weren't goals, but we're going to be upcoming to discuss, but.
Yeah, let's get that, now that we approved at the last meeting the goals, and there were listed on the goals are a whole bunch of upcoming agenda items, so we'll work to get those on.
Okay, any other items? Joyce?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay. The only question I have Can you tell me what's going on Station Avenue? When we had Beacon or Seasons come in and tell us about how they were building the new Shell station and putting in that property, if I remember correctly, they told us that they were going to turn the other Shell station into green space.
They
But from-
paved it.
But what I see is that they've painted the building and they've paved it, and
Right.
the one reassurance we had was that there wasn't going to be a gas station there, which clearly in their paving, there isn't, but I'm curious as to what's happening with that property. Because that sure doesn't look like green space to me.
It looks like it's getting set up for some kind of little retail operation, and the only hope for green space would be a large Christmas tree seasonally.
Well, if we never, did we make that a condition of the permit? Do you recall?
I don't really recall. I just remember that that was the,
Go with no.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we did.
Well, maybe we have the basis to rescind the fuel storage tank permit. That was what the purpose of that whole discussion was about, is as a board, we have it was our job to issue a permit for fuel there,
Right.
so that they could do the gas station. And I can recall voting no on that, because I thought we're turning Station Avenue a traffic nightmare.
Right.
And as much as I'm fine with the gas station, we have too many gas stations there, and the traffic patterns are atrocious there. And even the traffic patterns at that spot don't work, because they want the traffic to go in a certain direction, but people
Totally ignore it.
totally ignore it.
And
I've seen
my vote-
so many near accidents there, and
Right. My vote on that was because that was going to be green space. I mean, when that was presented to us.
right, so, yeah, it'd be nice to get some kind
So
of
like an update or something. What is going on with that property?
Well, we may have to have a licensing hearing, a show cause hearing on, just kidding. No, but I think it warrants definitely some scrutiny and some discussion, and update maybe at our next meeting on what's
Right.
going on there.
Just a quick update of,
I know they pulled the tanks up. I mean,
They did.
that was
took
part
the
of
lifts out
That
too,
was
if I
probably part of the,
Put the tanks out, they put the pumps out,
Yeah,
they
that was
they
probably
did
part of
that.
the
That was
discussion.
on the list of things they
Yeah.
promised to do, but also on the list of things they promised to do was to turn that into green space.
Space.
And at the moment, the green space seems to be quite small comparative than
Well, there's a
what
lot
they
of
had at
top-
least.
there's a lot of blacktop space, let's put it that way.
I know.
So yes, please, I would like to hear what they have to say. Okay, moving on from individual items then to town administrator items. We have the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the consent agenda?
I'd just as soon move it, and then we can discuss it if you'd like, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, sounds
I'm
good to
gonna,
me.
I'm gonna move for approval of the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
I just want to acknowledge the donations that are here for the Recreation Department are the list of donations in memory of Mike Stone, and a significant amount of funds were donated on behalf of Mike at the request of his family, so I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Mike's family for directing funds towards the Recreation Department, which will very gratefully be used for children's programming for recreation here in our town. So thank
Can
you
we
very
send a
much.
note of thanks to Mike's family for that?
I think that'd be very appropriate.
Thank you. Okay, anyone have any questions on the approval of Division of Natural Resource Shellfish Regulations? Or the approval of N-Star Utility pole relocation?
no
Okay.
ma'am.
So, in that case, all those in favor of moving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Bob, Town Administrator.
Okay, I have a couple of quick items. I do want to announce that we reported before that the engineering division was successful in being awarded a $434,000 grant from EPA funds under their Southeast New England program for wetland watershed improvements. And very significant grant. It's for us to move forward with the Chase Brook, Mill Creek combined park that the town is developing there, and we have all of those detailed plans. So that's a very significant grant, and I'm real happy to announce that the EPA has scheduled on this Friday, October 4, at 11:30 a.m., their entire regional announcement of all of their grants is going to be out at the Mill Creek Park. So we're sort of, Yarmouth is the stars of their program this year. And they've asked me to introduce the program, and our illustrious chair, Dorcas, is going to make a few comments. And if anyone can make it, I think that would be great. We have the event covered. It's also going to be, we're going to be filming it. So I think that'll be a real nice.
We have Congressman Keating there, don't we?
Congressman Keating is coming. And I really want to single out, too, Amanda Lima and Nate Wetton, our engineering division, that, we were really having trouble getting enough funds together to get this part going. And, they worked with Kathy and Karen in community development to identify how much extra funds we needed and search for grants. And this is all fantastic work, and that'll be a beautiful little urban park right there. So that's going to be on Friday, October 4. And I wanted to say tomorrow morning, starting at 8 a.m., we've got the wage and classification kickoff sessions with the town employees, department heads. So we're going to be initiating that study and getting everyone on board and working with that. And so looking forward to that very much.
Okay, anything else?
I think that's it for tonight.
Then I would entertain a motion.
I move we adjourn, Madam Chairman.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time and effort.
You got us out in time for the